Hey everybody, this reading is from a story tentatively titled The Glastonbury Woods. It will be out sometime next year from our very own Crystal Lake Publishing in one of their three novella collections, three different novellas in the same book by three different authors, and I'm really looking forward to getting this one out there. So it's kind of a creature feature, I guess, based back in the 80s. And the scene I'm about to read is after a group of kids who are driving up to Canada to see a wrestling event, big 80s wrestling event. And they're driving through Vermont, and there's an accident in front of them. A tractor trailer is blocking the road. So a very helpful police officer tells them of a shortcut through the woods that'll loop them around the accident and get them right back onto Route 7. Glastonbury is a real town in Vermont that is kind of reputed to have a lot of supernatural occurrences there. So that's why I decided to base it there. So they're in this in the shortcut, and one of the kids has a panic attack because he doesn't like being off the road, and he kind of gets out of the car to walk around and try to calm himself down, and this is where it starts, this scene. And I will need my glasses. He eased back onto the road, flipping on the high beams. He wanted to step on the gas, find Mark, and get the hell out of the woods. They were freaking him out worse than the crazy cop. But he managed to keep a tenuous grip on his panic and made sure not to go above 10 miles per hour. The pretense of this being a paved road had given up. He was now on a rutted dirt road littered with years-old rotting leaves from the deciduous trees that battled for space among the pines. They drove in silence, each staring anxiously through the windshield for any flash of color in the dark to indicate Mark was up ahead. An old song lyric rattled in his head, something about the minutes turning to hours. He was certain they were not going to find Mark, at least not alive. "There," Pat shouted, pointing. Dave squinted and sure enough was able to spot a figure running in the distance. He realized it was running toward the car, not away, and this sent fresh terror running through him. What was he running away from? Without thinking, he sped up, gripped by the vision of Mark being snatched by something in the woods before he reached them. He glanced at the speedometer. 20 miles per hour was reckless on this road. He eased off the gas when the car suddenly swerved. He tightened his grip on the wheel, turning into the skid. The car shuddered to a stop. "What the fuck?" he heard Pat. Felt Pat's eyes on him, but didn't turn. He didn't turn because he couldn't turn. Couldn't pull his hands from their death grip on the wheel. Couldn't move. "Dave?" A hand touched his shoulder. He recoiled, thankful his paralysis was broken. "Let's go," he said, opening the door and stepping out into the night. Mark was just reaching them, wild-eyed and out of breath. Dave and Pat grabbed him, trying to see if he was hurt. There was no evidence of an injury, but Mark was out of his mind with terror. He flailed to get out of their grasp, shoving them both away with adrenaline-fueled strength. He ran past the car, back the way they'd come. Dave and Pat turned to follow when Mark's scream ripped through the night. When they reached him, he was on his back, grabbing at his left foot. Dave took a step toward him when Pat grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Watch it," he said, pointing at the ground. In the eerie red lights thrown from the car's taillights, Dave saw what he was pointing at, and dread fell upon him. It was worse than panic, worse than terror. It was the knowledge that they would not live through this night. On the ground, spread from one side of the road to the other, was a row of deadly-looking mini spikes. "That's tack strip or something like that," Pat said in a shaky voice. "Cops use it." He stopped, their realization that Dave had already come to hitting him. Oh, fuck. Dave pulled out of his grasp, careful to step over the hazard, and knelt next to Mark. He pushed his friend's hand away and untied his sneaker, pulling it off gently as he could, then the sock. "Pat, go grab the flashlight out of the glove box. I think there's a little first aid kit there, too." He turned to Mark. "Lay flat. Your foot's bleeding pretty good. I'm going to keep it elevated until I can get a better look at it." Mark did as he was told, his face tightened into a grim mask of pain. He pressed Mark's bloody sock to the wounds, then looked again at the spikes. They were at least 3 inches long, and by the quick glimpse he'd had of Mark's foot, more than one had gotten him. Pat returned with the flashlight and held it pointed at Mark's foot. With his free hand, he opened the small plastic container that was the first aid kit. "What have we got?" Dave asked. Pat moved the light and rummaged through the contents. Band-aids, some gauze, medical tape, some sort of cream. "Okay," Dave said, trying to keep his breathing under control. Having something to focus on helped him keep panic at bay. "I'm going to wipe away as much of the blood as I can. Have that cream ready. I'll smear it on as best I can, then tape the gauze over it. The band-aids are useless." "It's that bad?" Mark's voice was reed thin, his eyes clamped shut. "It's chewed up pretty good, buddy, but we'll get you fixed up. There has to be a hospital back in Bennington. They'll be able to stitch it up in no time." "What the fuck did I step on?" Dave didn't answer. "Get ready. I'm going to clear away the blood now. I'll try not to hurt you." What he really meant was, "This is going to hurt like a bitch, so grit your teeth and don't kick me." He pulled the sock away, it was already soaked through, and did his best to clear the blood away to see the wounds. Mark screamed and jerked, trying to pull his leg away, but Dave was ready for him. "Fuck," Pat said almost reverently, and the light dropped slightly when he saw the excoriated foot. "Hold it still," Dave snapped, still wiping. He threw the sock aside. "Okay, give me the cream." Pat tried to hand him the tube, but he pushed it away. "Just squeeze as much as you can into my hand." He felt his palm fill with the cold gel. "Okay, that's it," Pat said, breathing like he'd just run the 100-yard dash instead of squeezing a tube. Dave smeared the cream around on Mark's foot, his stomach lurching when he felt flaps of skin moving under his hand. Mark groaned, but held his foot still. "Gauze," Dave barked, feeling like one of the doctors on St. Elsewhere asking the nurse for a scalpel in the heat of surgery. He wrapped the gauze tightly around Mark's foot, knowing it was going to be a bitch to get it off, but that wasn't going to be his problem. Some emergency room intern could deal with that. "Tape," he said, but Pat was ready for him this time, handing him the end of the medical tape. Dave paused, looking around. They were being watched. His spine turned to an icy steel rod as he searched the sides of the road for what? A pair of glowing eyes? The crazy cop? "Dave, what are you..." "Nothing." He repeated the same process, wrapping the tape around the foot until the small metal roll was empty. "Okay," he said, "that'll have to do. I'm going to unlace your sneaker and see if it'll fit over the bandage." I'm going to stop right there. I don't want to give away too much. It's a fairly short novella, but I hope you get the flavor for it from that little reading. And like I said, I'm looking forward to getting this in all your hands from Crystal Lake sometime early next year. Thank you.